The Aztecs. After 200 years as the dominant power in Mexico, the Aztecs were defeated by the Spanish in 1521. Did human sacrifice contribute to their demise? In July 1520, a Spanish soldier named Bernal Diaz del Castillo found himself in a strange land more than 5,000 miles from home. Looking toward the great temple of the Aztecs, the native people who controlled much of southern Mexico, he watched in horror as some of his comrades were forced up the temple stairs to be sacrificed to the Aztec gods. With stone knives, Aztec priests sawed open their chests and drew out their still beating hearts and offered them to the idols, Diaz later wrote. They kicked the bodies down the temple stairs. An Indian butchers below cut off the arms and feet and stripped their skin off their faces. Diaz was part of a European conquest and colonization of the Americas starting in the 1500s. Following Christopher Columbus's historic voyage of 1492, Spain settled the Caribbean islands of Hispaniola, today the Dominican Republic and Haiti, and Cuba. In February 1519, an ambitious commander, Hernan Cortez, hearing of great cities and gold in the land to the west, left Cuba and set off for Mexico with about 500 soldiers. That November, Cortez reached Tenochtitlan, the capital of the Aztec Empire. The Aztecs were the most powerful of the indigenous societies, including the Mayans that dominated Mexico for centuries before Columbus. Their capital, the site of today's Mexico City, was a bustling, prosperous city larger than any city in Spain at the time. The great towers and temples of Tenochtitlan filled the Spaniards with awe, Diaz wrote. Some of our soldiers even asked whether the things that we saw were not a dream. Montezuma, the Aztec emperor, at first greeted the newcomers with guarded hospitality, but soon the two powers were at war. In August 1521, Cortez defeated the Aztecs, bringing the great empire to an end. A debt to the gods. How did such a small Spanish army overcome tens of thousands of Aztec warriors? The most important factor was the allies that Cortez forged with the Aztecs. Indian enemies who were fed up with paying tribute to or fighting the area's great power. The Aztecs, originally a wandering tribe, settled Tenochtitlan in 1325 AD. According to their myths, some deities had sacrificed themselves to create the world. Humans realized they were indebted to the gods, saying historian David Carrasco of Harvard Divinity School, and sought to repay the debt with animal and human sacrifices. But there was also a more practical reason for human sacrifice. Anthropologist Ross Hatzig tells Junior Scholastic to keep everyone in line. In 1487, Emperor Ahuitzotl raided surrounding tribes that had refused to pay him tribute, taking thousands of captives and sacrificing them at the great temple. Ahuitzotl got his tribute. A half-century later, when Cortez made his final attack on Tenochtitlan, at least 100,000 native warriors fought the Aztec with him. The Aztecs' years of domination had come to a halt them. No good guys. The battle for Tenochtitlan ended in August 1521 when Cortez conquered the city. Diaz was horrified by the devastation. The streets, squares, houses were filled with bodies so that it was almost impossible to pass, he wrote. After the conquest, the Spaniards portrayed the Aztecs as bloodthirsty savages. In more recent times, historians have denounced the evils of the conquerors. The real story, Carrasco says, had no good guys. The Spaniards killed more people in 1 month than the Aztecs in 5 years in their sacrifices. Tenochtitlan was renamed Mexico City and became the capital of an empire called New Spain. At its peak in the early 19th century, it stretched north into the future United States, including much of the present-day Southwest.